Hallow, hallow, brain of tallow, guts are gone, noggins hollow. Seeking sweets in marshing mallows, watch your back in candy sack. I don't know what sack I'm watching.
What is going on, guys? Rogue TCG here, bringing the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG deck profile. You all voted for it. Here I am bringing it to you. Here is Zombie World. Now, this deck is very interesting. There's a lot of different variations you can put your own little twist to it with. And it is Halloween, and so I am bringing the Scary Spooky Zombie deck. And it's scary and spooky in a couple different ways. It's scary and spooky because Zombie World is a floodgate. Is scary and spooky because Super Poly is an unfairly designed card. And it's scary because one hand trap kills this deck. Here is Zombie World. This deck's entire purpose is to set up Zombie World, which turns everything pretty much everywhere that's relevant into zombies. And you pair it with this card, Doom King Baylor Drussy, which allows you to negate zombie monsters' effects when they activate them, or when their opponent or when a zombie monster's effect is activated, banishing a card from field or graveyard. You can use both effects in the turn, making this quite a powerful card, and making a pretty good win condition in order to facilitate a control-ish strategy. Not necessarily killing your opponent in one shot, but not necessarily just losing advantage the whole way, just trying to maintain a grind state. So that's enough yapping about what I hope the deck can do. Let's get to the card by card. Starting off the list, we're on triple copies of Unizombie, allowing us to target a face-up monster on the field, pitching a card, and if we do, increasing the target's level by 1, or we can target one face-up monster on the field. Monsters we control cannot attack the rest of the turn except for zombies, and then send a zombie from our deck to the graveyard, and then increase the targeted monster's level by 1. Notably, the main effect that we want to be using is the deck to graveyard one. However, this is going to be a very obvious through line throughout all the zombies, is where they want to be sent to the graveyard in order to activate their zompiric abilities. And I say zompiric like I'm saying vampiric because, I don't know, I'm fucking stupid. I don't know. Next, we're on triple Gozuki. Unizombie's a tuner, of course, so we can enable our synchros that way. But next we're on Gozuki. During our main phase, we can send a zombie from our deck to the graveyard, and if this card is sent to the graveyard, we can banish a zombie from our graveyard, except for Gozuki, to special a zombie from our hand. We're playing 3 of this because we have graveyard synergies that happen when cards in our graveyard are banished, specifically one card, but also this allows us to get another zombie out onto the field once we link it off as material. A very good card in terms of that respect. And we're playing it over Shiranui Solitaire just because it doesn't lose as hard to hand traps. Because if Shiranui Solitaire gets ashed or evaded or impermed, it's pretty much useless. While Gozuki is useless as well, but also it's still on field and has an effect when it's sent to graveyard. So it's notably less useless than the Shiranui Solitaire, which is most likely negated in the graveyard at point of resolution of Ash Blossom. We're on 2 copies of Samurai Skull. This one's a little bit of an old one, but it still fulfills the job that it needs to. When this card is normal summoned, we can send a zombie from our deck to the graveyard. That's the job it needs to fulfill. If this card is face-up card in its owner's control leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, we can special summon one level 4 or lower zombie from our deck except for Samurai Skull, enabling us to float into powerful cards like Gozuki, Unizombie, or even something like our next card, Necro World Banshee, which we are on 2 of. Zombie World in the field zone cannot be destroyed by card effects, and neither player can target with card effects. That's a continuous effect applied while this card is on the field. And then a quick effect, we can banish this card from our field or grave to activate a Zombie World straight from hand or deck. And that is a hard once per turn on that secondary effect. This card is really good because this enables us to get our Zombie World onto the field, as well as not to hand then to field, just straight onto field, so it allows us to play around Droll if it's been activated previously in the turn. But this card is very powerful because it allows us to fetch up Zombie World, and if we have it on field, it also protects our Zombie World, which is something that we can enable via our Samurai Skull being destroyed by our opponent's card effect, if that's what we feel we need at that moment. But we are on 2 copies just so we're able to do it twice throughout the course of the game, and opening it also isn't the worst because we do need discard fodder for some of our cards. Like Banshee is one of those cards that we would like to discard, so not the worst in the world. And we're on 1 copy of Glow Up Bloom. If this card is sent to the graveyard, we can banish it from our graveyard to add a level 5 or higher zombie from our deck to our hand. Or if Zombie World is sent to the Zombie World's on field while this card is sent to the graveyard, we're able to summon the monster we are going to add instead. So ideally what this is going to be doing is going to be adding Doom King Baylor Drog from deck to hand, but instead of adding, it's going to be special summoning it. just immediately turning on our main game plan and putting it on the board as an active threat. We're on one copy of the Doom King Baylor Drock himself. I already briefly went over it, so I'm just going to leave it at that. But also, it has the effect during the standby phase. If there's a face-up card in a field zone and this card is in our graveyard, we can special summon this card from our graveyard in defense position. And we can only use that effect of Doom King once per turn. And then the second effect is a once per chain. When a zombie monster, except for Doom King, activates, we can either negate the effect or banish a monster from field or graveyard. So very versatile there, and that one isn't hard once per turn, so we can use one effect and then use the other effect as well. We're on one copy of Jacko Bulan. We can discard a zombie monster, special summon it from our hand. During our opponent's main phase, quick effect, we can target a zombie in our either graveyard, not just ours, special summon it, but banish it when it leaves the field, then banish this face-up card until the end phase. So essentially what this kind of does is you Farfa itself in order to bring back a zombie from either graveyard. Now, from our graveyard, it's a little bit middling because most of our zombies are already zombies. However, if Zombie World's face up on the field, we can steal our opponent's boss monsters that we've sent to their graveyard, or they've sent to the graveyard themselves, in order to have them fight for us in our zombie army. We're on one copy of Algu Mazera. If a zombie would be destroyed by battle or card effect, we can banish this card from our hand or graveyard instead. If it's banished from the hand or graveyard, we can special summon it in defense position, then reduce its level by 1, and then each effect is hard once per turn. That's a really good effect, being able to have a Balinx just located in the deck or in the hand in order to send to the graveyard at some point in order to protect your cards. And then it's a free extender when you protect your cards, and that's just always happens. Since it doesn't banish itself when it leaves the field, it just is a continuous loop of protecting, banishing itself, special summoning itself, then you use it either as link material or your opponent destroys it, and then it's back in graveyard again where you can utilize it once more. So it's a pretty alright card. It's a little bit slower than I would personally like it to be, although the protection is something that you just can't quite beat, since it does protect your full board. If a zombie monsters you control would be destroyed by battle or card effect, so it will protect all zombies you control at the given point. We're on one Shang-Chi the Spirideo. During our main phase, we can send a zombie from our hand or deck to the graveyard, and if this card is banished, we can banish one zombie from our graveyard to special summon this card, but place it on the bottom of the deck when it leaves the field, and we can only use each effect of Shang-Chi once per turn. We will ideally want to be pairing this with a card like Mad Mauler, or this is the card we want to be sending off of Shang-Chi. This card's name becomes Plague Spreader Zombie while in the field or in graveyard. If this card is in your graveyard, you can target one level 6 or higher monster you control, reduce its level by 2, and if you do, special summon this card. Also, the player who special summoned it cannot special summon except for zombie monsters while this card is in face up in its monster zone. And that is a hard once per turn on Mad Mauler. So ideally what we're going to do is we're going to get Shang-Chi on field somehow. Special summon the Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi effect will dump Mad Mauler. Mad Mauler will then summon itself out by lowering the Shang-Chi's level. And then we can go into Immortal Dragon. So pretty nice combo there. And then our last two zombies in our main deck is going to be two copies of Mezuki being able to just banish itself from the graveyard to bring back a zombie from our graveyard. We're on two copies of the aforementioned Zombie Worlds. All monsters on field and in the graveyards become zombies, and neither player contributes summon monsters except for zombies. Really powerful effect against Glue Underease specifically. We're on triple copies of Super Polymerization. Who knows, who knew that turning all your opponent's monsters into zombies will actually give you really easy Super Poly, so Super Poly is right at home in this deck and allows us to break boards pretty easy, especially given that Yubel is still pretty relevant in the current meta, although it has kind of fallen off because of the Mulcharmies. Yubel is still around, and Super Poly to one of our targets really just hoses them. We're on one copy of 1-for-1 in order to be able to fetch our Glow Up Bloom. We're on one copy of Foolish Burial, just to send whatever we want to the graveyard. Double copies of Forbidden Droplet, because negation from sending cards from our hand to the graveyard is pretty good, especially if all our cards want to be there already. One copy of Triple Tactics Talents, one copy of Call by the Grave, and then this deck really loses to hand traps. So we're not just on these two, which we typically are on. We're also on Triple Crossout Designator as well as targets for it, which is going to be the remainder of our deck except for our last card. So we're on Triple Crossout, and then we're on Triple Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring because it is a zombie, so this is the one we can utilize the most. One copy of Effect Veiler, one copy of Infinite Impermanence, one copy of Mulcharmy Fulveros. This, of course, isn't necessary. This is just a crossout target. If you wanted to include something else, Ghost Ogre's pretty, alright. Ghost Bell's pretty alright as well. It kind of depends on what your metagame is. So I recommend playing around with that a little bit. And then lastly, one copy of Nibiru the Primal Being is our last crossout designator target. Lastly, we run one copy of Angel Statue Azaroon because we are playing the Silo Hat Rabbit. In our extra, the aforementioned rabbit in order to grab the Azaroon, one copy of S. Penis Little Knight as well as their gay lover IP Masquerena, one copy of the Suck, being able to draw a card every time a zombie is being brought back from our graveyard is really nice, and also being able to bring back your opponent's zombies to draw cards is also pretty nice. One copy of Avendred Savior, being able to do a cute little battle phase boost as well as dumping a card for cost is pretty damn good. Flying Mary, the Wandering Ghost Ship. We can target one of our level 5 or higher zombies that's banished or in our graveyard, place this card in our spell trap zone as a continuous spell, and if we use summon the monster that I previously targeted, while this card's in the continuous spell zone, we can target a level 5 or higher zombie we control, destroy a monster our opponent controls with attack less than or equal to that monster, and each effect is a once per turn. Really good card for going second, really good for removal, but we do need high-level zombies. Good thing that we do have high-level zombies in Doom King, Jacko Bolan, and Al Ghul Mazera. As well as our synchros. And this also solves one of the issues where what if our Doom King Baylor Drock gets banished by our opponent somehow? I mean, it is a dark, it's not very unthought of for this to get Bistieled, while this card gives us a very clean solution to that. Just bring it back, forehead, duh. Just bring that shit back. Like, who gives a shit if it's banished? So, a really cool addition to the deck now. I'm really hoping that this allows the deck to see some sort of play, although I do kind of doubt it because it does need a Poplar-esque, like, card. We are on one copy of the Vampire Fascinator, one copy of Yugioh, the Icicle Mayakashi, being able to negate effects when summoned, one copy of Yugioh, the Absolute Zero Mayakashi, kind of brutal against certain strategies, negate any activated effects of your opponent's banished monsters. If a monster is special summoned from the graveyard or an opponent's monster effect is activated in the graveyard, you can target one other face-up monster on the field, change its attack to 0, and if you do, negate its effects. This is very powerful because we can kind of choose when we want to be bringing stuff out of our graveyard, primarily in the standby phase with our Doom King Baylor Drock, or if this is used during our turn, this is just targeted negation whenever we activate a Mizuki or a Mad Mauler of the sorts. But that's it for our links. Now for our fusions, we're only playing 2 because these are just our 2 super poly targets. One copy of Draco Necro the Nether Soul Dragon. It can just make us tokens. It's pretty like mid, to be honest. It used to be the best super poly target for this deck, but there is now going to be a better one once it does release in the TCG, being the Duke of Demise. Now this one isn't quite out in TCG, although I do believe it is coming out fairly soon. It needs 2 fiends and or zombie monsters, and this is why I said it's pretty good against Yubel. You just eat up their whole board, you go, yummy. But you eat up their whole board and you make this card. And this card actually has a pretty good effect as well. Once per turn during our standby phase, pay 500 life points or destroy this card. Cannot be destroyed by battle. You can use each of the following effects of Duke of Demise once per turn. During our main phase, we can immediately, after this effect resolves, normal summon 1 monster. You can banish this card from your graveyard, target 1 level 4 or higher fiend or zombie in your graveyard, and add it to our hand. Pretty good effect. Gives us an additional normal summon, which plays very well with our Samurai Skull, because this one does only trigger on normal summon, as well as our large amount of Gozukis and Unizombies, which allows that to really, happen. As well as Super Poly now serves kind of like a dual purpose in the deck, being able to dodge interaction like Infinite Impermanence and Effect Veiler, now that we actually have a fusion monster that can proactively advance our game plan. But we are also on our synchros, 2 copies of Immortal Dragon. It needs a tuner and a non-tuner. We are typically making this with a Jiangshi and a Mad Mauler, although we can do it with other stuff if need be. This card reads, during our main phase we can send a zombie from our deck to the graveyard. If we do, this card's level becomes the difference with the original level of the monster that we sent in this card. When a zombie is destroyed by battle, while this card's in our graveyard, we can special summon it, but banish it and it leaves the field, and then each effect of Immortal Dragon is a once per turn. This is just another way to send a card to the graveyard, so very needed in this archetype, of course, and as well as the cute little revive effect is neat. Although, since it's only being destroyed by battle, it's not really going to trigger as much as you would like it to. But we are playing 2 copies just so we could repeatedly dump stuff over and over again. And then our last 2 cards is 1 copy of Red Eyes Zombie Dragon Lord and 1 copy of Skeletal Dragon Felgrand. Felgrand reads and needs a zombie tuner and a non-tuner. It is an 8, and this card reads, if it's special summoned, you can target a monster our opponent controls or in their graveyard and banish it. If a monster is special summoned from either graveyard, or this card's on the field, except during the damage step, you can target one other face-up monster in the field and negate its effects until the end of the turn. Very similar to Yugioh, the Absolute Zero Mayakashi, and if paired with it, it can be a devastating duo. And then lastly, Red Eyes Zombie Dragon Lord. During our opponent's turn, quick effect, we can target a zombie in our graveyard, except for it, and special summon it. If this card's in our graveyard, we can banish 1 zombie we control and special summon this card. So the best board that we can make, in theory, not in practice, is a zombie world on field, Doom King Baylordrock on board, Elgul in graveyard, a Red-Eyed Zombie Dragon Lord on field, and the Skeletal Dragon Felgrand on field, or we can replace the Felgrand with the Yugioh. Doesn't really make too much of a difference. And then either the Yugioh or a Vampire Sucker to get some additional draws each turn. But that's the main deck, solid 40 and then a solid 15. And in the side deck, these aren't necessarily side deck cards. These are more additional options that you couldn't play. Although this first one is kind of a side deck card. This is a new card, Wandering Titan of Tartarus. This card reads, it's a level 9, notably. If this card is sent from your deck to the graveyard, send as many cards you controlled as possible to the graveyard, and if you do, special summon this card. Then send cards your opponent controls to the graveyard up to the number sent to the graveyard by the first effect. So, you send 5, your opponent sends 5s. Neither player can activate monster effects in response to this effect's activation. If this card is sent to the graveyard except from the deck, you can send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard to send 1 card on the field to the graveyard. And you can use 1 Wandering Titan of Tartarus effect per turn and only once that turn. Really interesting card effect. It's like a graveyard Nibiru, but it activates the moment you send it. It's a very interesting piece of interaction, and it can actually lead to you breaking boards that you weren't really supposed to be breaking because your opponent let something go thinking that you were going to go for something like a Necrowold Banshee, when instead you send the Wandering Titan of Tartarus. Now the one downside is you do need to have an established board state before you activate the graveyard effect, or else it will only really send 1 or 2 cards from field to graveyard. And that ain't exactly the best, especially since this will get rid of cards like our face-up Zombie World on field, so you do kind of have to play with this a little bit carefully, although it is a very cool tool to now have access to. I did also, was initially planning on including the Ghost Fusion stuff in this deck, although there was a slight miscalculation where there wasn't actually any really good way in order to have your life points be lower than your opponent's to activate the good effective Ghost Fusion, which allows us to banish 1 zombie from our hand deck or graveyard as material as well if our life points are lower than our opponent's. And that's a little bit unreasonable to get to, especially in this deck, because there isn't any real way to lower our life points unless we splash something like Punk or Gold Pride. We could also, in theory, splash vampires, but the vampires all kind of suck, and this deck, I am trying to include as much non-engine as possible in the deck in order to make it so it has more of a chance in the current metagame. So, unfortunately, the Ghost Fusion stuff didn't quite make the cut. What also didn't make the cut was Mayakashi stuff. Yuki Mutsume, Mayakashi Return, and Ghost Beats Girl, a masterful Mayakashi Shiranui Saga. Oh my god, what a mouthful. These cards didn't quite make the cut. The one that was the closest to making it was Yuki Mutsume, just because if you control Mayakashi other than itself, we can special up from hand, and then we can send a zombie from deck to graveyard. We are locked into Mayakashis from the extract for the rest of the turn, which is the reason why it's not included in the deck, although it can be played if we are going more of the pure Doom King route, like playing with our main deck rather than going into our extra deck all too much. And then the last 2 cards that didn't make the cut was Shiranui Solitaire and Spirit Master. If you know zombies and you didn't see the Solitaire, you're like, what's going on? I did choose to cut the Solitaire just because it sucks really bad when it gets Ash Blossomed, or the moment you summon it, it gets Veiled or Impermed. It kind of means you gotta pass your turn. And even though we are playing the Crossout Designators, it's just really brutal with Shiranui Solitaire specifically, so I just did decide to opt out of it. But if you were to play it, I would recommend playing it with a Spirit Master and paired with the Ghost Fusion cards, if there is a way to lower your life points consistently. Just because since Ghost Fusion is able to banish stuff in your deck, you are able to banish your Shiranui Spirit Master in order to pop a face-up card your opponent controls, or you can banish our Solitaire in order to special summon a Shiranui that is banished. So if we have previously banished a Spirit Master, we're able to summon that instead. We're also able to banish cards like Chang-Chi in order to summon it by banishing another card from our graveyard. Or even a card that I didn't include at all, we are able to summon a card called Shinobi Necro, which will just bring itself back out when it's banished to activate a card or effect. But that's gonna be about it for the video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll be seeing you all later. Oh, and thank you to my one member. Thank you, Ari. If you want to become a member and support this channel and making the videos like you're watching right now, please feel free to stick around till the end of the video where I describe the benefits that you are able to acquire by becoming a channel member. But that's gonna be all for the video. Thank you all so much for watching, if you still are, and I'll be seeing you all later. Bye-bye. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you wanted to talk to more Yu-Gi-Oh! players like yourself, I would highly recommend checking out our Discord server. Link is going to be in the description, as well as the QR code on screen. We do talk somewhat frequently about Yu-Gi-Oh! And the current meta, so I would really enjoy to see you there. As well as we do recently now have channel memberships available on our YouTube channel, where we have 3 different tiers. We have Super Supporter at $2 a month, where you get loyalty badges, emojis, guaranteed comment responses, a shout out at the end of every video, as well as access to the members only Discord channel, where you get early sneak peeks at future videos. There is the Giga Supporter at $5 a month, where you have early access to all new videos about a day or two before they go up, as well as all the previous offers. And for $15 a month, we do have our final tier, which is going to be Femboy Fanatic. You get a guaranteed customized video every single month, as well as 1 hour of my time. Could be for anything you'd like. You want a duel? Absolutely. You want me to help build a deck? Absolutely. You want to play some Helldivers? Sure. I'll do anything for an hour once a month. But supporting does help me out quite a lot, and it does help me produce all of these videos. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll be seeing y'all later. Bye-bye.